Bills with an absolute beatdown of everyone's Super Bowl favorite, the Miami Dolphins. 48-20, the final. Welcome to the Buffalo End Zone podcast, everyone. I'm Kevin Carroll.
And I'm Jon Scott. Kevin, we could start off the top. I was wrong. I'll admit
What?
it. I picked the Dolphins to win. I thought it would be close. I did throw in a little caveat at the end of the show that we had going into this one saying nothing would surprise me. But I think I was wrong again. This kind of surprises me, Kevin, and we're going to get into why.
We shouldn't start the podcast with saying we were both wrong, so I'm going to try to avoid that. But I did think it would be a bit of a lower scoring game with what the Bills would need to do to control this one, John. But at the end of the day, the Bills came out and delivered on all three facets of football. Before we dive into the game, though, we just want to get out in front of the Tre'Davious White injury. It happened late in the game. It's kind of overshadowing this Bills win over the Dolphins to take control of the AFC East, John. But Trey White, we know the history. We know what he did to come back from that knee injury. And here he is again in a bad spot, John. And the emotion from his teammates following this game, mainly Mitch Morse, the Bills center, who could barely get the words out to start his comments on what Trey means to the team, what he's been through. So before we get into all the fun, just address the elephant in the room off the top that it looks like the Bills are going to be without their star cornerback again.
Yeah, it was originally stated by the team as an ankle injury, later said when they declared him out, Achilles. And we know, unfortunately, what usually comes with an Achilles injury. We even saw it week one with the Aaron Rodgers injury, out for the season. We will wait and see, and I'm sure some of you who are listening or watching this later, we probably will have some sort of a clarification by that point earlier in the week, tests being done and whatnot. But Tre'Davious White's initial reaction, I think, said it all. Really, Kevin, he's down, non-contact, and just the way he was reacting, incredibly distraught, overcome with emotions. I think he knew.
He threw his helmet 20 yards down the field, which the second I saw that, I was like, this is not good.
Yep. And then teammates like Micah Hyde and others came around him, and Micah waved over the entire Bills sideline to come and be around and be close to their brother on the field who was going through it, and carted off the field, towel over his head. Great gesture by the fans, chanting Trey, 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 and cheering for him because you know he's going through it. And so much was talked about his return from the torn ACL. And a lot of that, Kevin, ultimately turned to the mental side of things. And he was open about it when he spoke on it, saying he was in a really dark place at one point and needed to rely on a lot of people to help get him out of that darkness, that part of suffering an injury and returning from it. And a lot of it is mental. And I think, I'll speak just personally, that's where I went immediately. It was not, what does this mean for the Bills football side of things? It was not, what does this mean? What's the timeline? Oh, he's going to be gone for the year in likelihood and have to come back, and we'll go through the whole thing again in training camp of when's Trey doing this and whatnot. No, it was not about that. It was, you worry for a guy as a human being, of understanding mentally I work so dang hard to get back and finally start feeling, and as we discussed in the past few shows, looking and playing like the guy prior to that knee injury, and to have to go through it all once again in a different capacity. It's heartbreaking for him. I've obviously been around Trey since he was drafted in 2017, and you develop even just a personal connection to someone like that. It sucks. It sucks. I feel so bad for him, and we understand, and we know from seeing it, he's going to bust his butt, and he's going to be able to come back from this. But just this immediate time where everything is so raw and emotional, you just feel for him. And as you noted, you could tell that was not just focused on Tre'Davious. Everyone was focused beyond the win on their brother, on Tre'Davious, and the emotion was pouring out of all sorts of guys and Sean McDermott.
Yeah, it does suck. It sucks for the team. It sucks moving forward. It sucks that, I get that it's the NFL, but it seems like a few times a year now we're dealing with this as part of covering this team, is that a big name player dealing with something, or even not that, Jon, and rather overshadowing a team that's still in its Super Bowl window, Jon, despite what some people may have said after the first 3 weeks of the season and where the Bills were at, and that the Dolphins were the new sheriff in town and the new leaders of the AFC East, which they were. I will give them their credit going into this one. The Dolphins were the dominant team going in. The Bills had a great game plan. Head coach Sean McDermott credits the athletes on the field, not necessarily the game plan, because they were the ones that pulled it off. But, Jon, you notice right off the bat in this game, that first drive by the Bills, you and I talked about how they might attack the Dolphins and maybe keep two in the offense off the field, slow and methodical, not go for the big play. But the balance, Jon, with the offense throughout the day, and that opening drive for the Bills that ended with a Gabe Davis touchdown reception, really, I think, set the tone for what this offense was going to put out the entire afternoon.
I mean, you could break this game down to first quarter, first 2 drives for each team, and then everything else. And it was a different tone. You're right. Bills came out, and one thing that I felt was important on both sides of the ball was in this environment against this offense, you can't get shell-shocked out the gate like you saw happen in the Bengals' loss in the playoffs, where 14-0, and you're like, what in the world just happened here? I loved the game plan. I loved the variety. I loved the execution. They sprinkled in more runs to kind of, I don't know, soften up or set a tone or whatnot. And they weren't incredibly effective, but they did enough. Josh was making great decisions, and it was just the appetizer to the appetizer, I would say, of what was in store. Bills offense clicking early, dime to Gabe Davis, and they were just off and running from that point there. But really, Kevin, I look at this game again, first 2 drives for the Bills offense and their defense, and then everything else, because I'm sitting in the press box next to Andy Young and even Jackson Wang from our Albany affiliate and saying, is this going to be the second version of the no punt game? I mean, that's honestly what it felt like we were trending. Then the Bills get the stop on, and it just kind of changed from that point moving forward. But really impressive from the very jump, the Bills offense, and it's a continued stepping stone type of thing. While the points have been aplenty the past 3 weeks since the Jets game, the eye test is something I hold high value towards, and I think you and I agree. It's been progressive here, and they took me aback, not because of Miami's defense. I just didn't feel like they were running on all cylinders, even though things were improving the past few weeks. That was my hesitance in picking the Bills to win this game. And holy smokes, Kevin, big L for me, man, big L.
Jon, the way the game unfolded off the top, to me, like we have talked since the Raiders game, that there is this thing with the Bills defense where when the opponent's first drive, they're able to move the ball. The Commanders were able to move the ball. Terrell Bernard comes up with the interception to thwart a drive that looked like it was for sure headed for 7 points. Raiders march right down the field. They got their 7. You get to 14-14, Jon, and you start to get this feeling that the first offense that blinks, that has trouble, that has an issue, and Miami had an issue. Bernard almost had an interception early in this game, but it was holding Miami to 3 and out. Now, the Bills went 3 and out, but we saw how the game unfolded once the second quarter came around, and the Bills offense stayed focused. They executed the game plan, and at the end of the day, I've been begging for a big Stephon Diggs game, and that's what you got. As everyone says, big-time players show up in big-time games. Josh Allen, big-time game quarterback, showed up. Stephon Diggs, we might run into a track meet with that team across the field from us, showed up big time.
Let's start with things first quarter, first 2 drives, and then move forward here. Bills, first 2 drives, 16 first downs, 3 of 5 on third down, 262 yards on 7.9 per clip, and somewhat even here, 64 rush, 198 pass. Miami, 9 first downs, 1 of 5, though, on third down, 171 at 6.6, only 20 rush to 151 passed there, so there wasn't a lot. And I asked AJ Epinesa and some other defensive guys, really what changed? Because obviously they scored 14 points out the gate, and that's when we think, yeah, track meet shootout. And Epinesa is saying, I think they needed to get a little used to the window dressing and the motion and a lot of stuff that they throw at you and kind of get a feel of how do we have to decipher it. You could do as much preparation on film and game plan, and coaching can be great. Some things I think you just got to see. I think speed is one of those, but the Bills have seen this speed because they play them twice a year. So maybe that's not the adjustment. It was just a lot of the scheme and the motion and movement and stuff that Miami throws at you that makes them so effective. Kind of let them settle in. Taron Johnson once again saying maybe they're also just a little juiced and they just have to settle in. 2 drives in, then you go to it and you're like, Miami finishes with 393. Yeah, that's great. But you had 171 of that in the first quarter. 20 first downs in the game. They had 9 of them in the first, so 11 through the final 3 quarters. That's a different beast there. The Bills, more importantly, holding them to 6 points the rest of the way there. Defense did their part. It's a really weird conversation, Kevin. I don't know which side of the ball. I think you really should tip the scale. It's okay to say they were even, right? Like, there's nothing wrong with that. True complementary football. To me, my bigger takeaway, I don't know. Actually, I was going to say it was going to be the defense, but since I had more doubt in the offense coming into the game, I'm all up in there. I guess I got to go 50-50. I got to cop out.
It's hard to say, John, because while you're talking, I'm literally going back and forth because normally there's kind of a structure on which unit was the biggest on the day. You know, last week it was the defense. Usually it's the offense by nature and Josh Allen and what they do. But you and I could honestly just keep going back and forth and not really lock on to one side of the ball in this one just because of how the performance was. You could talk about Ken Dorsey's plan on offense, and while you're talking about it, just naturally go over to Sean McDermott's plan on defense and how the two complement each other and played a role. And you can even break it down to the simple thing, John, of what does every coach say? Where do you win games in football and in the NFL?
I think, honestly,
the trenches.
I know. I'm not going to the trenches. I'm going to say this, I think, is what's going to fuel heavily the overreaction fire that's now going to fall on the Bills across the national landscape is, oh, we know Josh Allen is superhuman and he had this incredible performance, in all likelihood will earn his 5th career AFC Offensive Player of the Week honor when playing the Miami Dolphins alone. So I think that's something that people know. People know Stephon Diggs is great. But to see this offense hum like this, then really limit such a highly prolific offense like they did with Miami, now I think if you're an outsider, you say, oh, dang, they can rush the passer. Even though they lost Tre'Davious White, they got a bunch of guys in that secondary. They minimized Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, and they couldn't run the ball as well. And in the end, you think, could this be the most complete team in football? It's week 4. The Bills are going to have bad moments. They're going to have more great moments here. We've actually seen at this point in the season, the Bills crescendo, and then they play some big games, and then they seem to hit a lull in the middle of the season. And then the hope, which a few years ago, 13-second season, they then found it, hit it, and were rolling on all cylinders in the playoffs until that unfortunate end. Last year, they hit the lull and they never really came out of it despite winning all of these games. So let's pump the brakes a little bit while enjoying it in a completely dominating fashion that I'm going to say, Kevin, will distribute the praise evenly.
Yeah, and you didn't want to get into the trenches. I want to get into the trenches on defense and kind of piggyback off the fact of the team not having Tre'Davious White. You know, you and I had talked, would Kaiir Elam be up for this game because of his performances against the Dolphins? You know, that situation, it looks like the hand might be forced moving forward, John. But all this predicated off of the Bills' pass rush by the front 4 alone. Fact that Von Miller is supposed to be, according to reports, starting to practice this week. When he'll return to action remains up in the air. But, Jon, if you're that front four and you're able to get to the quarterback and you're looking at a Miami offense where Tua is getting the ball out of his hand quick, but you still have a pass rush with those lengthy arms of people like Greg Rousseau and A.J. Epinesa able to disrupt things early, I don't want to say – no, I do want to say I haven't – aside from an interception here and there, you seem like game after game so far for the first 4 weeks, it's the defensive pass rush that you're noticing more and not even needing to worry about great play on the back end by the cornerbacks and safeties. I think that defensive push is that good right now.
Oh, I would agree with that, though I will say in this game in particular, I think it's not just coach speak. They kind of worked in unison, the defensive front and the back. They played off of each other because what do we know? This Miami offense is completely predicated on timing. They get the guys the ball quickly in space. That's why the motion is so effective. And oftentimes you hear guys and the smart film people say, if you can get Tua Tagovailoa off the first read, that's when you can really affect this offense and knock it off the tracks a bit. And in my opinion, that's exactly what happened here this afternoon. Bills tightened things up a little bit on the outside and didn't allow the receivers or that first option for Tua to be available in that 2-second range that he has shown to be getting the ball out. 2.3 seconds has been his average amount of time to get the ball out going into this game. And there was plenty of times, I'm sure, even just to the naked eye of the average fan, Tua gets the ball, he locks to get into his hitch, and he has to reset because whoever it is that he's looking to throw it to is not open. Then you compound that and add into that mix the pass rush being relentless and continuing to get there. Sure, you're not going to get there in 2.3 seconds, but you can get there in 3, and you never think of just the fraction of time that it takes, but that's what was happening here. That does not take anything away from the pass rush on the defensive front because they were phenomenal once again. 5 sacks, 9 quarterback hits in this game. Tua had only been sacked once going into this game, so they completely flipped Miami's offensive line and their protection on its head. Yeah, they lose Terron Armstead in the game, came in banged up, but that's not why this pass rush continued to eat the way it has. They have been relentless, and this is what we know the Bills have been searching for when they signed Von Miller. To be honest with you, they were searching for it to bolster a deep attack when they signed Mario Addison to pair him with Jerry Hughes. That's how long they've been searching for this type of a group. Now it appears you're seeing the young guys like the Epinesa, the Rousseau, even Ed Oliver, I'll throw into that mix, really starting to elevate and come into their own. Leonard Floyd has been a monster, I think, the first 4 weeks of the season. Daquan Jones, Ed Oliver's been fantastic. Daquan Jones has an argument to say, hey, I've been just as disruptive and impactful on the interior as him. We haven't even seen a Jordan Phillips pop off, a Tim Settle pop off. Poona Ford's not even active. When you're seeing Kingsley Jonathan get a quarterback hit fresh off the sidelines, it's crazy. I think the defensive front, to your point, and I've said it the first 3 weeks, has been the most impressive part of the Bills' defense. I'm going to keep it there, but I do want to give the credit as kind of working with each other for why they were able to disrupt Tua so effectively this afternoon.
And I will give credit where credit's due with the defensive backs, Jon. It looked like for this unit, more man coverage and getting up in the wide receivers' faces when they were coming off the line of scrimmage. I think Romo even mentioned that during the broadcast. You think of some of these top offensive attacks in the history of the NFL, like the Rams at one point, like Peyton Manning with the Colts. How do you stop them? You get up on the line and you disrupt the wide receiver coming off the line of scrimmage and screw up all the timing. And I think that part of McDermott's defensive game plan paid huge dividends as well.
And what was part of our conversation coming into this was the curiosity of how Sean McDermott would go about calling defense against this offense. In the past, a large criticism of the Bills' defense in general has been their seeming unwillingness to alter from their core for who they are. It was, we're always going to stay at nickel. We're always going to play, for the most part, zone, off man. And the people in Kansas City losses and whatnot would say, why are they playing 8 yards off the ball and allowing free run off the line of scrimmage for someone like Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle? And it was really interesting to see, as we continue to get a pulse on Sean McDermott, the defensive play caller, how this was unfolding. Tre'Davious White, before getting hurt, came on a corner blitz twice, Kevin. I mean, it wasn't just, hey, we're going to come up and not give you that free release off the line of scrimmage. It was sending guys. It was sending different sorts of blitzers. It was a variety of stuff here. And yeah, they held true to themselves in some capacity, and that's what a great front four allows you to do as well. But it was good to see easily, with the naked eye, for the average novice non-film watcher, in real action, to see, oh, I noticed that Sean McDermott is dialing things up a little differently than a normal week. And it warranted that against a team that is anything but normal offensively. I loved what I saw from Sean McDermott. I really like what I've seen. And I don't think it's a coincidence that you were seeing the defensive line play better, even the linebackers. Matt Milano's a first-team All-Pro. He continues to fly around. Terrell Bernard, as you mentioned, almost got another interception, got his hand on a ball. Micah Hyde, another interception. I think you are seeing these guys thrive at their best early this season, in part because of what Sean McDermott is doing with the defense.
Before I shift back to the offense and we wrap up kind of talking about the defense, kind of Damar Hamlin active with Jordan Poyer not suiting up for this one. Saw some time on special teams. You were at the stadium, Jon, so this would have been his first game action since collapsing on the field in Cincinnati during Monday Night Football towards the end of last season, and a pretty emotional day for him. And like everyone, pretty emotional when you start a day talking about Damar Hamlin and have to end it with talking about Tre'Davious White.
Absolutely right. The Bills, the first few home games here, have chosen, and this will probably stay this way the entire season, to not have players announced coming out onto the field. They come out as a team collectively, offense, defense, special teams, everyone comes out at the same time. They did that again, but Damar Hamlin was the last one out. And I think maybe people weren't expecting it, and so maybe it didn't get this raucous response, because I think everyone was just, oh, the team's out there. They didn't necessarily notice that Damar was the last one there. But yeah, people and everyone here, especially those of us who were in Cincinnati and witnessed this and have seen it all the way through. Yeah, I mean, it's another step forward here. And regardless of if it's just special teams or whatnot, and I know we heard Damar say it afterwards, he chose this. And so it's just another step forward of him. While his life will never just be normal because of what happened, is something we've never seen before. I think it was a good step forward for Damar and this team in general, with Damar in the situation, to take another step forward to, at least in this sphere of sorts, getting back to normal.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you have players on both offense and defense, who were there that night, like reporters who were waiting to see their teammate actually get on the field. Jon, I'm back to the offensive line, the guys in the trenches. That was a focus of the Bills on offense during the offseason. We were there during training camp. Bills with a rough night on Monday Night Football to start, Jon, but that offensive line, I think I even questioned it after the loss to the Jets, and maybe the moves they made that they thought were improving the offensive line might not be what they thought they were. But, against the Raiders, against a tough pass rush by the Commanders, the Dolphins today, is that offensive line does look very much improved.
Yeah, and what are the two new pieces? The two guards, Connor McGovern and Osiris Torrance, the rookie. You have to give a lot of credit to them. We know what Deion Dawkins is. Yeah, there was some concern about the inconsistencies going in this season with Spencer Brown, and the Max Crosby performance against the Raiders week 2 really kind of elevated him. And I think you really haven't noticed any hiccups ever since that point because he had a rough opener against a talented pass rush and guys off the edge against New York. So that's good. Mitch Morse, he's a Pro Bowler. You know what that is. So the new pieces they addressed and upgraded, it appears, were the guard spots. Connor McGovern, a sizable contract to a guy that you didn't necessarily know if that was worth it. And then you get a second-round pick in O'Cyrus Torrence, who in a lot of the mock drafts and guys that we spoke to on this show leading into the draft, Torrence is a guy believed to have been a first-round talent at least. And so paying dividends in investing high assets in the offseason to address the interior of the Bills' offensive line. Josh sacked twice. That's going to happen. Christian Wilkins, Bradley Chubb, Emmanuel Ogbah, and others, they got some talented guys in that defensive front, even with Jalen Phillips not playing in this one because of an injury. It's also what Josh Allen can do. Once again, we saw a few plays where, understandably, it's going to happen. The offensive line gets beat, but Josh, just moving in the pocket. It's not even him taking off and running. It's his ability to back pedal or just slide a little bit in the pocket, the presence and movement and feel for being in that pocket. And then obviously his incredible arm talent. It ends and capitalizes the way that he's able to elude things. It works together, but kudos to that offensive line. And even though the running game, when you just look at it in terms of numbers of, 3.6 yards per carry, some of that dinged because of the Kyle Allen kneel downs at the end, but nothing to write home about. But I think you continue to get enough out of the running game to make the offense what it needs to be.
Back to Allen, when he's moving in the pocket or out of the pocket, 2 touchdowns, of course, stand out. Is that first one to Gabe Davis running down the sideline. Then you had that one to Diggs where he really stepped up in that pocket and just threw a dart into Diggs on that short touchdown. And then later on, Jon, in the game, rolling out, buying time, and telling basically, at least it looked like to me on TV, James Cook to go, get down the field. The guy who was covering him stepped up to get Allen, and there you go. You have a big chunk play. It's that kind of fun stuff that Josh Allen can do, that if you stay inside the system and the rest of the game, you're just taking what's there for you. When those plays happen, they're fun, and you can breathe more of a sigh of relief knowing how the rest of the game plan has gone on.
Second time in 4 games, and you take what you saw in that opener and you think, you talk about flipping a switch and going to the other side of things. The week after the debacle in the Meadowlands, Allen ties a career high with an 83.78 completion percentage. He goes 84% here. He won AFC Offensive Player of the Week for that performance. He even kind of scoffed and said the numbers were somewhat pedestrian. 21 to 25, 320, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, and a perfect quarterback rating of 158.3. We mentioned it in the pod. This dude owns the Dolphins. It's wild. I mean, he just owns the Dolphins. And I mentioned it on the postgame show. It's a fun place for Bills fans to be in because for so many years, nearly 2 decades, no matter how good the Bills defense was, no matter how good the Bills were in general with the momentum and the hype and the excitement was around them, New England came in here and Tom Brady just took it to him. Like every single time. He had that ability to just suck the life out of you as a Bills fan and maybe as a team to know that no matter how much they're humming, Brady's going to come in here and do his thing. And I get the feeling that while the Dolphins don't think they are incapable of stopping him, it's just shown now his entire career, even in 18, when he's trying to figure it out, he's running all over him then. Now he's throwing all over him now. I think it would be shocking to me. Someone's going to have to really go nuts for him not to be AFC Offensive Player of the Week for the 5th time in his career against the Dolphins. That would be, it's unbelievable, Kevin. And he looked it. It's amazing to see where he's come since that Monday night game. This may be, this version of Josh Allen, not just this game, but what we've seen the past 3 weeks, maybe the best version of Josh Allen we've seen in his career.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like I said, like the feeling watching Josh Allen in this win over the Dolphins, night and day from how you felt after watching the Jets game, where I think I even brought up maybe not on the podcast, but to someone else, maybe the clock hit midnight on Josh Allen. Maybe everyone knows what this kid's all about at this point, and it's just that time for the Bills to kind of have to come up with another way. But smart Josh Allen, who has his ability still to turn something out of nothing, is there, and this offense is humming right now, Jon. And I even think, we'll focus on Diggs. Maybe Diggs, Jon, gives Josh Allen a run for his money as far as AFC Offensive Player of the Week goes, with 3 touchdowns of his own and put up a bunch of yards, including breaking, away from 2 Dolphins tacklers that, quite frankly, you and I might have done a better job at trying to bring someone down than those 2 guys did. But I didn't feel as big of a game as Diggs had, that it was being forced to him in this one.
No, it was natural. And 55 yards on that broken tackle to get the yards after the catch to make that dynamic play. That was a big momentum swing. And that's just something that this offense has been searching for and lacking. Certainly you don't expect necessarily to break tackles and then turn these things upfield like that, but just the yards after the catch. So really encouraging for him to do that. As you said, Diggs was doing Diggs. 7 targets, 6 catches, 120 yards, and 3 touchdown catches in this one. And it's funny, Kevin, I want to shift it to Diggs has been the alpha. He's been the heavily fed guy the first 4 games here, and first 3 games, it continues here. And then we always shift the conversation to what do the Bills need in a secondary option? I don't know. I think maybe that our conversations have been misguided a bit, because I think distribution is really what it needs to be. And I kind of mentioned it a few weeks ago of Gabe Davis doesn't need to be the Robin to his Batman. Maybe everybody just needs to be the Robin, and Diggs could be Batman. And Davis, 3 for 3. Cook, 1 for 1. Kincaid, 4 for 27. Murray had 2 catches. Sherfield had 2 catches. Knox had 1 catch. Hardy had 2 catches. I mean, everyone's getting involved. Maybe that's all that matters in terms of who's going to help release some of it and off of the shoulders of Stephon Diggs. I think it's an interesting way to maybe look at this Bills passing attack moving forward.
Yeah, and you look at the complementary part of the run game in this, and this was part of the broadcast too that Tony Romo was pointing out that is something a bit different, that when you've been able to do what you've been able to do with the ground game, and teams are noticing that, all right, we're going to have to deal with the ground game from the Buffalo Bills as well, that's going to cause and lead to more opportunities for Stephon Diggs to get into better position when there's concern now from opposing defenses that it's not, okay, let's just not let Josh Allen push the ball downfield. Their run game is average at best. Now that's something for teams to worry about in setting up opportunities for more from Josh Allen and the Bills offense.
Once again, it's 3 guys too. Cook, 12 for 29, not great. Scored the touchdown there. You see Murray, he had that 29-yard run. He had another big chunk play in the passing game. Don't tell me that guy's the oldest running back in football. That guy, he looks like he's in his mid-20s, the way that he's showing burst and things like that. Damian Harris, once again, coming in a little bit later and being a bit more of the hammer closer to wrap things up as well. All 3 of these guys getting carries, all 3 of these guys getting involved even in the passing game. It's showing you, again, you don't necessarily have to focus, all right, the Bills running game is James Cook. No, he may be the 1A or the 1, and you got 2A, 2B with Murray and Harris. I don't think it matters. You're getting what you need, again, to keep defenses honest. They have the capability, like the Murray run, to break things off and help push things down the field. You cannot just focus on this passing attack and say they can't run the football on you. I think that you're getting enough, even just the presence of the running game, to work as a great change of pace and way to keep other teams honest.
Yeah, Bills in pretty good spot as they get ready to head over to London for their game against the Jaguars, Jon. Of course, the report over the weekend that Von Miller set to return to at least practice this week. I know we're early in the process here, but I just kind of want your thoughts on what we might see from Von Miller and where things might go with him returning to practice at some point this week.
So just a refresher here on the protocol timeline here. The Bills would have to open up the 21-day practice window because he's on the PUP list to allow Von Miller to participate in practice. So let's say they do that Wednesday and he practices Wednesday. That doesn't mean he's playing next Sunday in London against the Jags, to be honest with you. It would be shocking to me if that's it. I think he's going to want, and the team is going to want him to get far more of his legs under him, get back into the football swing of things. So he has 21 days. That's what you got to do. The Bills waited the full 21 days, I believe, last season with Tre'Davious White, and they've done that with some other guys here. So I expect it's not a surprise because you can activate him. He has 3 weeks before he would have to play again. I think that you see him slowly start working in there, and maybe the Giants game or maybe even the one after it is when you would expect to actually see Von Miller back on the field. And of course, the way this pass rush is humming, and you even see a guy like Kingsley Jonathan in the mix, that's where it becomes, well, one, they got to clear a roster spot. So what happens there? Obviously, you expect a corresponding move with Tre'Davious White, which will likely need to be used to bring in another cornerback. But what do they do on that defensive line, and especially at the edge position? Because they got 5 guys right now. I don't think they're going to keep 11 defensive linemen and 6 guys off the edge. Be curious to see, because everyone's had their hand in the great start here. It'll be curious to see the maneuvering that they do with a certain welcomed addition to Von Miller, but it's kind of allowed them to push off a very tough roster decision that's upcoming.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting week for sure, with the team getting ready to head over to London at the end of the week and face the Jaguars there. A win's a good feeling, John. A U.S. Ryder Cup team, not a feel-good story, but I think the way they hung in there, John, was pretty impressive. If we could talk about a little bit of golf before we head out. I did what I told you I was going to do. I got up early Friday and Saturday and just watched golf all morning. Friday was horrible. Things got a little bit better, but so entertaining, some of the golf towards the end of Saturday and then this morning, just to watch what unfolded over there in Rome. Did you get up early and watch any golf or no?
I did not. I actually tried putting it on this morning while doing some work for the pregame stuff we have to do, and my stupid remote on my TV wasn't working. So I spent some extra time. It actually made me later to get here. It was a whole thing. But honestly, I don't think I really missed anything. I caught Cantlay on 17 and then 18 on Saturday, which was probably all I really needed to see.
That's what I was going to say. That's all you needed.
I will say this. I was talking to other people in the press box here before the game, and I gave a take that's probably not popular. I'm sorry. Why is Sam Burns yelling at the crowd when he has been bad and they were getting pumped midway through the Saturday afternoon session? Like, I can't hear you. What are you doing, bro? You're getting annihilated. And then Joe LaCava is waving his hat and Rory's thing. I'm like, I don't understand why Rory got so mad. To me, I would have been like, okay, Joe, wave your hat for this 5-point deficit that you're about to go into, and then we're going to steamroll you again and beat you by 5 on Sunday. Like, I just didn't really understand it. Incredibly disappointing performance by the United States. But it's weird. I keep seeing this. The last 5 Ryder Cups have all been decided with a 5-point margin of victory, all for the home team. So back in the United States in a couple of years, we'll see if the tides can shift again.
Bethpage Black coming up there. Yeah, that was one of the talking points on how they make the course to suit the home team in most of these things and help them out a little bit. So we have the Bills, Jaguars. Bills are the home team. That is over in London, coming up at 9:30 in the morning next Sunday. We'll keep you posted with everything going on with the Bills during the week. But as always, post-game show coming up a little bit early after the Bills and Jaguars at 9:30 in the morning. And It'll be quick and to the point. For Jon Scott, I'm Kevin Carroll. Thanks for joining us, everyone.